Hello, my monstrosities. Hello once again. Today I bring to you, not a reaction or a review. I guess it's like a response. So, Elite Dark Assassin told me that What the 40K talked about how the 10th edition Tyranids Codex poorly characterizes them. And that's a thing that I've been complaining a lot about. Now, they did it probably in a better, more eloquent way than I do in a bunch of my videos, right? And Elite Dark Assassin was curious what my thoughts are. I figured I'd put it to video. Broadly, well, actually, let me say this first. This isn't going to be a react. I'm going to tell you to go watch the video. I'm going to put the link in my description. Hopefully, YouTube doesn't get funky with the links as it sometimes does. So you can get the full picture. I'm going to speak about things for the most part broadly. That way you have to get all the context by still clicking and watching their video. I'm just sharing my thoughts on things said in the video. I'm going to try not to divert from that path, excuse me, too much because I admittedly took a couple of takes. Some takes I give too much of what I would like to see, and others not so much. But here we go. First off, I agree with kind of what they are saying the issues are. And the large issue is poor characterization, right? That's the whole thing. So a lot of things don't make sense of why they translated to rules the way they did. But let's start. Synapse. Yeah, the way Synapse got implemented, really weird. Previously, you just auto passed morale. Don't know why they. Well, actually, we do know why. And this speaks to a couple of comments and everything, and the fact that GW really wanted Battleshock to play more of a part. It turns off certain army rules, it makes it so that you can't use stratagems, and you can't hold objectives, right? Your OC goes to 0, and you can't do actions if you're Battleshock. So, on paper, that's a lot of reasons that you don't want to be Battleshocked. So you can't have a faction that ignores that mechanic that they wanted a lot of weight on. However, as we've seen, you can. So this could straight up be a buff to just say Tyranids within Synapse can't be battle shocked. Yeah, and I think nobody would turn a cheek because it wouldn't really matter. And that's kind of one of the things that what the 40K points out. Like, yeah, one of the proposed fixes in that video is putting it back to how it was in Ninth Rally. Yeah, I think you could do that. Nobody would turn an eye. And this is where both of us agree. This flavor here does not match +1 strength characteristic. Oh, the Tyranids are focusing so hard so their muscles do a thing, contract and release harder. +1 strength. Doesn't make sense. And we all know it's an FAQ, band-aid for an open wound. A gas, as you will. I've spent enough time talking about how there's a lot more issues than just the strength as to why Tyranid Melee feels like shit in this edition, right? So there's attacks, attack profile, attack numbers, AP, no strike versus sweep, all of the things that just undoes it. And we're going to hold off on the proposed change there for later because it also comes back to 9th edition and there's a larger discussion to be had there. Then we go over to Shadow in the Warp. Also, what the 40K nails it on the head. It feels bad for several reasons. Mainly, I guess, to water it down, it either does nothing or does something. We all know that. But what the 40K points out something a little bit better than I think I have on video at all the times I've talked about it on video. Where, yeah, it could do something, but it could still do nothing while doing something, right? So, Shadow in the Warp, make everybody take a Battle Shock test. There's a chance that your opponent's whole army gets Battle Shocked. There's a chance that nothing gets Battle Shocked. Those are the two extremes. The in between is I Battle Shock some things that don't care. And that's the more realistic one, where the things that I need to fail Battleshock will pass, and the things that I don't care if they failed will fail. It'll be a unit in my opponent's deployment zone that's kind of doing nothing but screening that'll fail. A unit over here that didn't plan on using a stratagem anyway and isn't holding the objective might fail. Uh, and this random unit over here that I really just needed, that doesn't necessarily have to be not Battleshock to complete its action, failed here. Those are the ones that'll fail, and you'll be like, all right, cool. I did something, but absolutely had no effect on the game. Now, the better part is, oh, all these units that are on the objective are trying to do something and wanted to use a stratagem against me. Oh my gosh, those are the ones that failed. And even then, it might be 2 out of the 5. So there's a real range here of what actually you'll get to doing anything around here. So that's one thing that what the 40K points out really well as to the actual range of how this might be effective. And I will spoil their proposed change because this is one that I couldn't disagree with more. Out of all the video, this is probably my biggest disagreement. Oh, and before I forget, Shadow in the Warp, the point out, this is, just being pedantic, but it does need to be stated because enough new players come and go on these videos. So they need to know that this is how this interaction works. You can't use Insane Bravery on Shadow in the Warp. That's something that is mistakenly said in the video. That's not true. However, the point still stands that there's even abilities past that can undo the Battleshock. Some units can just straight up undo being Battleshocked, or ignore Battleshock, or automatically pass Battleshock. There's these units that do that as well. So if that wasn't already a thing that you wanted to avoid with Shadow in the Warp possibly not being effective, there you go. That's another layer. But the thing that I disagree wholeheartedly with is another callback to Ninth. I don't think there should be any interaction with, depending on if there's a Psyker on the field. You have factions that don't have Psykers at all. 40K 10th edition kind of wiped being a Psyker from being a thing. Even some of the factions that are known for having Psykers barely have them, and they barely do a thing with their psychic weapons if they have those. Synaptic Nexus, I've griped enough. We have several Psykers that are characters. Only one of them has a psychic weapon that can use Power of the Hive Mind. It's stupid. So, I don't want to see any interaction of, oh, because of Psyker around thing. No, I think you still have to make it a blanket thing. Past that, I really love that what the 40K understood a thing that I've been. This is one of the things. I know that I'm not as. Well, actually, it's an internet thing. If you ask me, and as somebody that's worked in education enough, that has enough decent reviews, I guess, that my message gets conveyed usually fairly well, right? Tends to happen. The knowledge gets absorbed. Goodness, terrible timing for all of that to be flubbed. But so I think I put things well enough. But on the internet, people will. It feels like intentionally miss the point that you were saying, and I feel for what the 40K because I saw some of those comments. Hoo-wee. Oh man. But one of the things that I've talked about is that your army feeling goes past just your army rule. No shit. Every army has an army rule. But past that, there's things on your army's data sheets that remind you this is the army you're playing. If you look at, like they were talking about in the video, Necrons, if it has Gauss, it has lethals. If it has Tesla, it has sustained. There's other shit besides just these two things that has Gauss. Gauss. Flares, Reapers, it has lethals. You'll understand. Flares, Reapers, Blasters, you'll understand that if it has Gauss, it has lethals. That's a thing that's core, and it doesn't say, hi, my army rule is if you say Gauss, it has lethal. If I say Tesla, it has sustained. It doesn't need to be that. But I do think there needs to be more things that on the datasheet are unspoken but are there for you to understand. My example that they also talk about in the video, if I remember correctly, I watched it a couple of times. but I've had to shoot this take way too many times today, so that I'm starting to blank, and I'm choosing now before anything else happens. But like Nurgle, if you're playing Nurgle, you might not have the best strength, but there's a pretty good chance that the weapon you're using, if you rolled a 6, it probably has lethal. You'll probably do okay. So no, it doesn't just say only in contagion range, or oh, faction, you're playing Nurgle, your weapon has lethal hits. Like, no, it's not that handholdy. It's not that fucking. That's not the point. What we're getting at here, the weapon profiles also do something there too, and all of that on the weapon profiles being a portion of the video that I would love to agree with. Um, and this being an example of one that I would also go to. So, in the video to talk about how the alien weapons should be more alien. And this is one where I begrudgingly have to agree with some of the comments. Is unfortunately GW is trying so hard to not do what they're doing here as an example, where the weapon has an additional thing that isn't your fucking ability. Conversion, for example, looking at the Thunderkin here, it doesn't say your faction ability is if you use a conversion weapon. No, it says conversion. Conversion. Each time an attack made with this weapon targets a unit more than a foot from the bearer, an unmodified successful hit roll of 4 up scores a critical hit. That's what conversion does. Unfortunately, I don't think that they're going to put that on more things, not just conversion, but those types of things. So I did like the idea of those weapon profiles, but I do think that GW is really trying to water down as much as possible. That way, anybody can plug and play the same way everybody is upset about the possible Cracker Barrel rebrand and things like that. Where, thanks to capitalism, if you can make it as simple as possible so you can put it out, that's what'll happen. So there's that, right? Where unfortunately I don't think GW would tend to do that, especially where, as an example that was going off of, whoops, where'd I put it? Here, sorry, confused that one a bit for a second, because this again wasn't the first take. But was barb guns, where you look at the barb launcher, that ability for the barb launcher or for the barb gaunt should be on the barb launcher. Disruption bombardment should be over there, and the barb gun should have an entire separate ability. Probably something with Overwatch or some shit. Who fucking knows? Or rapid fire. What? I don't fucking know. But that should be over here. That way, when you look to what I had pulled up that has something similar like a shard launcher, it should do something similar. It shouldn't just be blast heavy, but it should have this effect down here. For alien weapons, you're firing living ammo at people using living things from living things. So there's all that should go into it from over there. Now, coming back to Army Rule, there was the proposed fix and why I had AdMech up. Right? Let's go to Castle Robots for this. The proposed fix for Synapse, one of the proposed fixes to entail, is like, yeah, +1 strength doesn't make much thematic sense. It should be something like skills or whatever to increase those within Synapse, which I agree would make more sense. However, this is where a lot of my come from the fact that I can see how GW is going to do it. If they were to do it today, maybe it might apply, but if they were going to do it things moving forward, I see how they'd do it. They'd go, yeah, just like how we did it with imperatives for AdMech. So AdMech, if you're in the wrong imperative, you hit on 4. Ah? But because you're not an elite army, if you are doing the right thing, you hit on 3. How do we feel about that, everybody? So not only now you have to be within Synapse, / the right imperative, use the right weapon at the right time to hit on 3s. How do we like that? But if you're not in the exact scenario that we've manufactured, you're hitting on 4s. That's not it. And also, I see them taking it a step further and doing some orc bullshit. Where, oh, you hit on 5s and 6s. Like, get lucky, dude. But if you're in Synapse, you can't fail Battleshock, and you hit on 4s just like a non-Xenos. Like, come on now, right? So I see that going awry. And that's just, I don't know. And you'd go, well, like, that's just the castlings. No, that's kind of what they did. Breachers, destroyers, infiltrators. Like, you look, that's what they did for this faction. So that's like step number one of unfucking the Admech Codex, in my opinion. But like that's what they did. So I'm scared for them to do something like that in that extent, right? Going past that though, why do I have Von Reinsleeper's Trigon Haruspex pulled up? Well, I feel that whatever it is should interact with a variety of our shit. It should affect Termagant, Von Reinsleeper's Trigon, and all be useful for whatever, because that's what an army rule does. It should affect and be useful for everything. I don't give a fuck if my Termagant's one attack is now, as like, in the, to give it some grace, yeah, now I can wound an elf on what, 3? With my one attack and 0 AP? Who gives a fuck? I'm hitting on 4 anyway, right? So, like, right? But that's why I would like something that does, again, encompass everything. Now, we come to this tab where I have Battleshock pulled up because I want to demonstrate a point. I think that GW half-assed everything. Like, no shit, they half-assed everything. But I also think that they could easily unhalf-ass it by putting the pedal to the metal a little bit. As I've seen some comments point out between my videos, other people's videos, as I was, thinking about some things, Tyranids were obviously kind of what they wanted 10th to look like. They wanted Battleshock to matter way more. Where you don't want to be Battleshock. Your army rule might turn off depending on what you're playing. Your stratagems, can't do those. Can't hold objectives. They wanted more of that to be at play. But, to the non-Tyranid player, and hell, to Tyranid players, you'd go, yeah, we do Battleshock. You see how I controlled F Battleshock? There's 12 results. There's not 12 units out of all of our units that do Battleshock. There's much less. And ones that are actually taken and usable. Right? Death Leaper already has 2 of those, right? So we got Death Leaper, 1. Neurotyrant, 2 with 2. We have Parasite Mortrix bringing us in for a 5th result, but 3 units. Haruspex, 4th unit. Mawlock, 5th. Neurolictor, 6th. Screamer Killer, 7th. Zoe's have an interaction. Don't cause Battleshock, but hell, we'll put them in. 8th. Hierophant. Biotitan. That is Imperial Armor. Gives us what? 9th? Yeah. So, who's bringing a Hierophant? And the other ones, out of all of that, out of all this list, if you wanted us to do Battleshock things, we should probably do more Battleshock. So that's one of those things where, yeah, you could have easily had a slam dunk there as doing more Battleshock. And to another thing that I kind of forgot here, going back to the army rule of Synapse, yeah, it could be punishing outside of it, but it doesn't need to be absurd anymore. I think we're past the days where you just die outside of Synapse. But then you look at the things that have Synapse. Let's go here, sir, and pull up another lictor. And the list is well done, but you also have to think about their positions in the board. Broodlord would be up front. Hive Tyrant in the back. Neurotyrant in the back. Parasite could be up front. Turvy could be in the middle. Swarmlord, I guess you could argue middle. Winged Hive Tyrant back. Tyranid Prime possibly forward, realistically, because of the movement speed in the back to the middle. Hyperadapted Raveners could be in the middle to the front, possibly. Maleceptor front. Neurolictor midboard. Norns midboard. Warriors midboard. Zoe's midboard. So you stop at the midboard. You don't have too much to go that much further. And to those applications that if you do something with Synapse, you have to take into account the range of things. And I'm not saying that you need the easy way out. I'm just saying that it'll end up being right back with the same issues, if not worse, where if you make it so that if you're outside of Synapse, you just auto lose the game while not providing enough units to be at all of these areas of the board. Because if I want to take a list without a Brood Lord, uh, and possibly without a Maliceptor, what am I putting up front? Right? So all those things kind of comes into play, which we'll revisit the specific Synapse in a second as well. So think could go that. But another thing that what the 40k points out is that the interaction between other armies on top of that. There's no reason, there should be no reason that Tyranids could possibly feed the warp. That's the entire thing where they don't interact. They hate each other because they both don't get shit out of it. Tyranids won't get any biomass out of them, and demons need to not have Tyranids around, or else they won't have people to feed their warp shit, right? So, Shadow and the Warp possibly healing all of the demons across your opponent's army? That's fucked. So that's a good thing of, yeah, they kind of designed this space of some things that are a little bit kooky that aren't Imperium. Do something with Battleshock, because the Imperium has to fight the horrors that are the universe. Saw a post recently about how somebody was finding out that the Imperium are not the good guys. But, you know, to that point, right, the way that this has been sold to so many new players, that, oh, everything else does Battleshock, Chaos Knights, Chaos Demons, Tyranids have some things that do that too, right? Like, you can't just give it this because now of the interplay of those. Thematically, Tyranids should never be feeding the warp. So it shouldn't happen on the tabletop that that's possible. But hey, there's also some weapons that shouldn't affect Necrons, and I understand you still have to keep it to some aspect of it, but this is a bit more jarring. If a Neurolictor happens to feed a demon, I'm not fussed. If my entire army rule that I get once per game does it, now I have an issue. So that's the thing that I like that what the 40k pointed out in the video, that, yeah, probably shouldn't interact like that. Now, going to some things that what the 40k proposed, essentially bring back ninth to some extent. And I agree the morale test should be passed. I don't agree that Shadow and the Warp should interact with Psychers at all. I already said that, but there's not enough things and you would be right back in the same issue. Oh, I'm facing World Eaters or Corn Demons. Guess what? I'll have one of my army rules does absolutely nothing because they have no Psychers. Oh, I'm fighting Necrons. They do nothing. Hell, let's even look at the list of, let's go up here. Like, the Sisters don't have any Psychers either, right? Fuck. Sisters, I mean, Custodes have what? The Sisters of Silence, but that's their whole thing, right? No, they're blanks, not Psychers? I don't remember. Whatever fuck that keyword is, so I guess I can't talk on that one too much, but Asher Meltarum, you look at this list and you tell me where Psychers interact. Right? So, you know, shouldn't interact with Psychers, in my opinion. And then, plus that Psychers don't even have that many psychic weapons. So, don't really love that one out of the video. That's probably my biggest disagreement past that. But, and here's the other one, Synaptic Imperatives. I've asked for them to come back. I don't want them to come back tied to specific models because you're going to run into the same issue. Some things will just be balanced worse. Some will be OP, some will be jack shit. So GW-ifying something, I know they'll be like, yeah, we gave you our synaptic imperatives back, but doesn't that make you want to take a Trigon Prime, right? Right? No. You don't. I don't even have a Trigon Prime anymore. Fuck, that's right. Don't you want to take a warrior? Yeah, I'd like some. I'd like some sustain. That'd be cool. Uh, but the warrior is kind of shit. But you'll take it because you'll get sustained. But that's 150 points for 2 MSU units to use the ability once. per game. It, but not really. No, no. And then there's some that are just ass, like or not terrible, but the Parasite of Mortrix. I really don't care this much if I'm bringing a shooting list, so I'll never take it. And then even if I'm taking a melee list, I have Invasion Fleet. They've put some of these things in other places already. Unfortunately, well, fortunately, I guess to some extent, but if I really care about piling in consolidating an additional 3 inches or making a normal move possibly in Synapse range, instead of the Parasite of Mortrix, probably take an Invasion Fleet because the Parasite of Mortrix sucks, right? So I don't want to see these tied to specific models again. I want them to be back in some iteration, but not tied to specific things. But that also runs the risk of doing bum 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 voices of command because they operate in the weird same design space. And even I was going through it like, yeah, if you just do the skill, spaghetti-o, but even then, within Synapse, there's that. I was thinking about something about leadership because another thing that the video really nails is that yes, Tyranids, Synapse, Hive Mind influence is about control. The Shadow and the Warp is about control. What if we did more objective control and some things like that? SpaghettiOs, you did it with Astra Militarum over here. And mind you, they've watered down this list from what they did in ninth. Now look at all this shit, right? So they're trying to simplify a lot of things, but they reduce the power of a lot. So it's kind of hard to operate in the same design spaces. So while I agree that what the 40K understands what went wrong with the characterization of the codex, I don't think I have any gripes there. I just see how GW will fuck it up enough that I don't really agree with the possible fixes. And hell, I'm not. Let's on that note, let's come back to throwing myself under the bus. I've done the same shit, right? I've put out a video where I'm like, it'd be nice if it was movement, and then thinking about it, what's stopping GW from saying, well, instead of being a movement 6 on Termagants to keep it balanced, you are starting at movement 5. You're just barely faster than Death Guard, but like outside of Synapse, woo, spaghettios, you're movement 5. Within Synapse, you're movement 7, though. Like, it has to be something a little bit more than just stats back and forth because of how they've done everybody else's, really. I think a lot of other ones are done a lot more tactfully. Get Chaos Demons, you look at Sisters, Miracle Dice as an entire rule. That's not just a stat thing. That's not just a stat block increase. That's you could possibly just stop rolling dice at certain point. Yeah, okay, maybe not anymore, but you can change the fate of your game. You look at Custodes, they're supposed to be better in combat than anybody else. Guess what? Every unit can choose if they want to be better in combat or whatever they need at that time. They also all hit on 2s and have an invuln save of 4. They're Custodes. Admech, Drukari have a lot of anti-insert keyword here. So they are removing that from the board because they have found out ways to either torture you or remove that problem. There you go. So things like that, I feel like a lot of army rules were thought out a bit more, and I know the one that I just said wasn't army rules, but going back to the profile thing. But orcs, the WA happens. You don't want to be wad on. Everybody backs up for the turn of the WA, and if the orc player knows what they're doing, your opponent couldn't back up. Now you're just getting wad all over, right? Necrons, reanimation, they're coming back. They are coming back. Run. They don't stay down. Run. Right? Shit like that. So, yeah, the army rule, swing and a miss out of Tyranids. I think it could be fixed, but it doesn't. It leaves a lot to be desired. And I guess that it doesn't need to be said anymore because this is primarily what were my thoughts on the video. The thoughts, good. I agree with things said in the video. I think we did isolate where the problems are correctly. Like, yeah, why is my monster more strong next to this monster instead of more tactful, which is their whole thing? Like, they're either mindless beast or no, right? So it's given me some more thought as to my proposed changes, which I actually want to go back to an idea that I proposed about stratagem cost, which is strategy, and actually continuing that idea from something else. So I'll be looking at that to be a video out of myself now with this thought process in mind. But yeah, good video. Go check it out to understand the full context of the words that I just said out my mouth. I should have the link in the description. Sometimes YouTube doesn't let me put certain links. I don't know. So if it's not there, I promise I probably tried. So yeah, if you like the video, like it. Got a comment from a comment. And until next time, peace out, my monstrosities.